The Toyota RAV4 might be the most desirable compact SUV in the world, but it too isn't without its fair share of issues. In fact, we'd argue that nowadays, the RAV4 represents one of the worst values in the segment, as its horribly dated tech, mediocre powertrains, and not-so-great practicality make it lag behind its competition drastically. To better understand what's so wrong with the world's most popular crossover, we've compiled a list of 5 reasons why you should avoid the Toyota RAV4. Number 5. Powertrains are way too anemic. In the world of turbocharged engines, it's a welcome change to see a large displacement, naturally aspirated engine, and that's exactly what the RAV4 offers. Its 2.5 inline-4 engine is very well known, as it has been utilized in a number of vehicles over the years, and has proven itself as one of the most reliable engines of modern times. However, with that in mind, most of us have been bummed out by its power output. Now, don't get us wrong, 203 horsepower isn't a worthless amount of power. It's pretty alright. However, it's nothing special compared to the likes of the Mazda CX-50, which comes with an optional 256 horsepower turbocharged 2.5-liter inline-4, which just runs circles around the RAV4. To get a more powerful RAV4, you'll have to look at either the hybrid option, which produces around 220 horsepower, or at the plug-in hybrid RAV4 Prime, which manages to push out a very solid 302 horsepower. However, both versions are going to set you back considerably more money than the regular RAV4. And a big bummer in our opinion is the fact that all of these models come exclusively with a CVT gearbox, which, albeit economic, makes the vehicle feel so much less enthusiastic about the fact that it can push up to 300 horsepower. Now sure, the aforementioned CX-50 comes with a weaker engine from the get-go, and so do most other options in this segment, which is a nice thing for those of us who don't have the deepest of pockets. Plus, the RAV4, in its non-hybrid configuration, still remains the first place in terms of MPG, thanks to the CVT and Toyota's general focus on economy. Number 4. Styling feels very outdated. Now before we continue, we have to say, we like how the RAV4 looks. We love its angular, sharp, and boxy design, and it really, truly feels like a properly capable SUV, and it stands out from the crowd. However, it also stands out from Toyota's current lineup, which is the complete antithesis in terms of design language compared to the RAV4. Most modern Toyotas are much softer and far more elegant, with less aggressive and in-your-face lines and features. Just look at the Toyota Crown, as that's practically the vehicle that kickstarted this trend. It has very curvaceous lines, slim headlights, and a gorgeous chrome grille, and the rear is just as stunningly subdued and elegant as the front is. Heck, this design language is so attractive to both consumers and critics that Toyota decided to implement it on the Prius too, which was turned from one of the ugliest cars into a properly beautiful vehicle because of it. In addition to this, the vast majority of the RAV4's competition also tends to look far more contemporary than it. The CX-50 is far more elegant, while also retaining a touch of ruggedness, thanks to the fact that it has unpainted trim around the wheel arches. Overall, as much as we adore the RAV4, and we do, it could do with an upgrade. It doesn't need to completely shed its character. However, Toyota could do a little bit to make it more in line with its own lineup. Number 3. Interior quality is mediocre at best. Now here's an issue that kept increasing with the years. You see, the RAV4 never had a good cabin in any regard. However, as many of its peers got redesigned and modernized next to it, it started feeling much worse compared to them. First, the seats themselves are nothing to write home about. They are relatively hard, aren't particularly well profiled, nor are they well padded, and they feel, well, cheap. The Hyundai Tucson, which is a more affordable vehicle than the RAV4, comes with much better seats, for example. Plus, practically the entirety of the cabin is made out of hard, scratchy plastics, which is unacceptable for a $30,000 vehicle. In addition to that, the infotainment screen, especially on these low-end models, is just a complete drag to use. It's an 8-inch unit, and it is just so counterintuitive. Its UI is very reminiscent of Toyota's of the mid-2010s, which is to say, it works, but it isn't great. Once you start getting up the lineup, you start seeing some improvements in this regard. However, there's still a lot of stuff that doesn't improve. For example, the interior is always full of cheap plastic. Everything below the top portion of the dash is made from that nasty, scratchy plastic that feels like nylon. And while this is easier to maintain on an off-roader, the RAV4 is honestly far from an off-roader. Let's be honest. The 10.5-inch screen is also an improvement, but honestly, it retains the same dated feel as the 8-inch does. It falls short of the double-screen layout of the Hyundai Tucson, which just makes the car look far fresher than it. Furthermore, CX-50 just kicks its ass in this regard through and through. It's a far more premium cabin, with better seats, material quality, and a much better layout in general. Also, its infotainment screen and its swivel-based controls are by far the best in the business. Number 2. Underwhelming off-road performance. We all remember the good old days of the first and second generations of the RAV4 from the mid-90s and early 2000s. Those two were just a blast to drive, with an incredible combination of road comfort and off-road prowess. However, those days are long gone, and the current generation, just like its predecessor and its predecessor, is just a glorified hatchback that's a bit jacked up. Despite its no-nonsense off-road styling, and despite its history, the RAV4 doesn't really have a lot of aces up its sleeve in terms of standing out from the crowd, in terms of off-road performance. Don't get us wrong, it isn't the worst thing in its class, but it darn well isn't the best either. The TRD Off-Road and other more rugged and all-purpose oriented trims might give you some minuscule advantages over, say, a Ford Escape or a Hyundai Tucson, but you'll not find any joy from leaving the road behind you. Once compared to the likes of the Bronco Sport or the Forester, though, it becomes evident how much the RAV4 doesn't stand a chance against them. Heck, the RAV4 comes as a front-wheel drive car as standard, which is just laughable, especially next to the Subaru Forester and its symmetrical all-wheel drive that's standard across the range. Now don't get us wrong, we get it. Most people who buy a Toyota RAV4 aren't going to go off-roading with it, and it makes sense why Toyota didn't care for improving this side of it. We're just sad that the vehicle doesn't deliver on its legacy. That's all. Number 1. The competition is just better. Let's be honest here. The current generation of the RAV4 has overstayed its welcome. It's outdated, outpowered, and outpaced by the entirety of its competition. Only a few vehicles can provide less value for money than it, in terms of usability, tech, practicality, off-road, and so on. The vehicle feels like an aging, once great athlete that's trying desperately to stay relevant amongst their far younger and far more vital competitors. It's just so unceremonious for Toyota to keep offering the RAV4 as is, as it is desperate for a major redesign to retain the number 1 position it is ubiquitously known for. One of the bigger problems with the RAV4 is its pricing too. You see, if it were a more affordable vehicle compared to its rivals, it would be a great choice, despite all the issues. However, it is practically identical to the CX-50, which just feels like a much more upmarket and far more modern vehicle. Not to mention that some of its other rivals, like the Hyundai Tucson, undercut it in terms of pricing by $1,000. But even with all of this in mind, though, we must be honest with you. The RAV4 is still a very compelling choice. It is still the top dog in terms of reliability, and that is actually only amplified by the fact that the current generation is nearing the end of its lifespan, as most issues and gremlins have been fixed. As a result, despite lacking in many other segments, the RAV4 still kicks the ass of any of its Korean and Japanese rivals, save for the CR-V, which is also a bulletproof vehicle in its own right. Plus, thanks to its boxy styling, The RAV4 is a very spacious car on the inside, and there's loads of room for both the front and rear seat occupants. Since it's such a dated model, you'll also oftentimes find it at a discounted price, which, combined with its amazing reliability, makes it still one of the better choices in the segment.